Good evening and welcome to Face to Face, the program where we talk with local radio and television broadcasters here in South Dakota. Tonight I'm with someone who does the 6 and 10 o'clock news for KELO-TV. She does numerous things. Not only does she do co-anchoring, she does investigative reporting, she does a parent time report, and she also volunteers at several organizations. I'm here today with Angela Kennecke. Thank you for being here, Angela.
You're welcome, Avi.
So could you just, give the viewers a quick biography of yourself?
A quick biography. What do you want to know?
Well, where'd you grow up? Where'd you, live most of your life?
I was born in Minnesota. My folks were from Minnesota and Iowa, actually right around what we call KELO land. My mom was from Lakefield, Minnesota, and my dad was from Hartley, Iowa, a couple little small towns, southwest Minnesota and northwest Iowa. And they grew up here, and then I was born in St. Cloud. We lived in Minneapolis when I was a kid, moved out east to Connecticut, lived in Florida, also lived in Minneapolis again for a second time, and then finally ended up in Des Moines for high school, and I went to the University of Iowa for college.
Wow, you really were around.
Every couple, 2 or 3 years, I always call myself a corporate brat because my dad was transferring or moving with other companies, and it was a good experience for me. It was always tough to adjust as a kid to a brand new place, but I think it helped me become who I am today because I have no fear of new situations or new people. That doesn't frighten me. I'm used to that, so it was a good thing.
Who did you grow up with watching in television broadcasting?
Well, I remember when I was about 12, I was thinking, I'd gone through, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a ballerina, as a kid. I'm going to be, for a while there, I wanted to be a librarian because I loved to read. And when I was about 12, I was watching Barbara Walters interview people on TV, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to interview people. That's what I'm going to do when I grow up. So Barbara Walters, I guess, was who I watched when I was a kid. Was that
one of your big role models growing up?
I think she would have been. There weren't too many women in television news when I was a kid. They were just starting to break into TV news, so she would have been one of the first.
Any others?
Jane Pauley would have been one of the first women that I remember watching. Diane Sawyer. And trying to think of who else would have been on the networks at that time. Jessica Savage.
What kind of education did you have for journalism and broadcasting?
I got my degree in journalism, my college degree in journalism at University of Iowa.
Did you have any previous education, anything in high school? Or?
Oh, yeah, actually, so when I was 12, I made up my mind that this is what I was going to do, and I never went off that path. A lot of people decide something and then change their minds. So when I was in 7th grade, I wrote for the local newspaper in the town I lived in Connecticut. When in high school, I was editor of my paper, and I did a lot of extra projects throughout high school, interviewing local journalists, kind of like what you're doing now. I interviewed local journalists in Des Moines and wrote papers about it, and took journalism classes in high school, and then went on to college. In college, I started working for a TV station my junior year and started reporting in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, my junior year for a TV station about 30 minutes from Iowa City, and worked for free for a summer, and then they hired me on part-time after that, and then I started doing morning cut-ins and eventually began reporting full-time for them.
How did you get working for free down in Cedar Rapids?
Well, I was still in school, and my internship was unpaid.
Oh, it was an internship.
Yeah, so I was doing it for free, but I loved it. So I would work in the mornings in the hospital. I figured out, gosh, I must have been really young because I don't remember feeling tired. But I'd work in the mornings at the hospital at University of Iowa, and then I'd drive up and work. So I worked like from 8 to 1 at the hospital, and then I'd drive up and work from 2 to 11 in Cedar Rapids at the station.
What did you learn in college? Did you learn a lot of?
Well, the college set the foundation, I think, for journalism principles and writing. Legal issues, the laws or rules of good journalism, and the writing. But the actual learning of what I do in terms of putting together stories and putting them on the air, I learned more probably in the first week on the job than I did 4 years in college.
How did you get the internship, and how did that all develop out?
When I was in school, I went to a class that had a local reporter come speak to our class at the University of Iowa. And right after she spoke to us, she showed us some of her stories, and she talked about what she did. And right after she spoke to us, I ran up there and I said, "Who's your news director? How do I get an internship at your station?" And she told me, and I called, and I went up there and interviewed with the news director. And I remember he gave me the internship, and I remember driving home in the car just singing, and I was so excited because I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to be able to finally do what I've been working towards all these years.
How long were you at Cedar Rapids?
I was there 2 years.
What
2 years.
What did what did you see for your 2 years there? What was the general? I guess the general news. What was the main topic of discussion then?
I was there for the 1988 elections. So I really, as an intern, I really got to do, and then as a part-time reporter, and even as the lowly reporter when I got hired on full-time. In fact, I was a videotape editor for a while, and I was a production assistant for a while, so I did a lot of those types of jobs too. But I got to interview Barbara Bush, the senior President Bush, got to follow them around. Dukakis, interviewed him. So these were all big people in the 1988 election. And
walking and talking with the bigwigs there.
Yeah. In fact, a little segment that I did asking a question to President Bush at the time was actually put on the CBS News. So that was kind of exciting at the time as an intern.
So you left Cedar Rapids and you went to Rapid City?
Right. Cedar Rapids had a big shake-up, as we call it in TV news. About 30 people at that station were laid off, and I was out the door. Oh. So I was just out of college, too, and was looking for a job. And the position was open with KELO in Rapid City. And at that time, I knew a little bit how to shoot, but I didn't have to shoot for my own video in Cedar Rapids when I was there. So I had to really become a decent shooter when I was out in Rapid City. It was never one of my strongest points, but I carried around my own camera. And at the time, we had the old 3/4-inch decks and all that gear, and I would be strapped down with the light belt to the deck, and I remember every place I'd go, people would run up to me and say, "Can I help you carry something?" I must have just looked really pathetic. But I went to Rapid City, and it was a great learning experience because I was totally on my own, reliant on myself to get the video, to put the story together, to send it back to Sioux Falls, and it really helped me grow as a reporter. I wasn't there very long. I was there about 6 months.
And
before I came to Sioux Falls.
And then they came here to Sioux Falls, and
right.
You've been here for a while. What have you...
11 years.
11 years. Yeah. Wow. What have you... I guess what have you learned from being here for 11 years? What have you learned about Sioux Falls and the news in general?
Well, the news has changed since I've come here. We've grown as a city. It used to be, we had a lot of slow days, where you'd be scrounging around looking for news, looking for stories to put on the air. And those days still happen occasionally, but we have a lot more news now here in this area than we ever had before. A lot more stories, a lot more things happening, just a lot more going on. You
started in at KELO and Sioux Falls, 1989.
No, in Rapid City, and then
you came here in 1990 or still 89?
Well, it would have been 1990, I guess.
And at the time, you had the big legends, Steve Hemmingson and Doug Lund. As a young reporter, what was it like working around them?
Well, I think when I was younger, especially, here I was a young woman, blonde, and I wanted to be taken seriously, so desperately wanted to be taken seriously, and I really probably went overboard in trying to prove myself and trying to prove that I knew what I was talking about, that I knew what I was doing, that I was capable of doing the job. As I've gotten more experience, and I think the viewers and people have come to know me more, I don't feel like I have to prove myself anymore, that people know, who I am, and they know that I can report a story and be fair and balanced and that sort of thing. But it was, I don't know that I was ever intimidated. I learned a lot from my co-anchors that I worked with, but I always felt like it was up to me sort of to prove myself that I was worthy of sitting next to these people that were true veterans of the business.
You mentioned that you were young, you were a woman, and that you were a blonde.
Yeah.
Do you think that even with some reporters today who are young, they are female and they are blonde, does that give them some negative points when they go into the field? When they start into the business, is that stacked against them?
Well, there are so many women in the business right now. I don't know if it's looked at in the same way anymore. Actually, there's a shortage of white males, and part of the problem is that television news does not pay that well, especially starting out. So a lot of people are choosing to go into other fields. I mean, you can make so much more now, any sort of computer-related field that you want to go to, or even internet related field, that it's hard to attract a lot of people to this field, but for some reason a lot of women are attracted to it and have entered it. So it's a lot easier to, for every job opening, there's probably a lot more women that apply than men.
Do you ever get that look that when the people see you on the news, and then, you know, if they have a chance to run into you, do they give you that look that you're only there because you are a blonde? Do you ever get that?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. In fact, I always thought being blonde kind of went against me, because really a lot of stations, and not so much in this market, but in larger markets, want to fill those positions with minority females. So I always felt that, you know, if I wanted to maybe go to a bigger city or a different city someday, that actually being a blonde, white female actually probably was a detraction, probably went against me. So.
Well, we've got a lot of questions here about, you know, what's your, you know, favorite and worst and all that. And when I was around the station, I did hear this story a lot, and I have to ask, what is your worst moment or most embarrassing moment ever on camera? And you know, beforehand, I will say I kept hearing the phrase coyote involved with it.
Yeah, or coyote, however you want to call it. I was correct. I used to say coyote all the time when I first came to KELO-land, and I was told coyote. I said coyote. Yes, that is an embarrassing story, and I think that has been shown to almost every one of my colleagues out there in the country. So I don't think there's too many people that haven't seen it. Had nothing to do with me though. But I had just started anchoring the 10, and hadn't been there very long, and we were reading a story about how President Bush's mother had died. And in the video, we were showing a man picking up a dead coyote and throwing it into the back of a truck.
Oh my.
And I didn't realize it. I was busy reading, and I didn't realize that that's what was showing on the video. But Steve was sitting next to me, and he was looking at the video, and they came back to him, and his face was just like, you know, just the worst look ever. And it was one of those moments, and you know,
what happened?
A classic moment. I think.
What do you do when, you know, a mess up happens? You know, something offhand, you know, like something breaks or someone shouts out something while on the air.
Yeah,
how do you
I
deal
think,
with that?
You know, at the time, the more experience I have, the easier it is to handle those types of situations. When something like that happens, you just tell people, you know, we messed up, sorry, you know, we'll get it corrected, or you're just honest and upfront with people, and I think the viewers appreciate that.
What's been one of the most interesting stories you've ever done?
Well, you know, I've done a lot of stories with extraordinary people, politicians, movie stars, athletes. I've done a lot of stories with ordinary people in extraordinary situations, and I think I have to say, hands down, the ordinary people in extraordinary situations are the most interesting stories I've ever done. Probably the most touching story I have done was following the Spencer tornado, when KELO-TV held the telethon for the tornado victims. And I was in the front lobby of KELO. We were going live. We were talking to our viewers. We were trying to raise money for the victims to help them rebuild the town. And we had children coming. We just had people pouring in our front door, and it touched me so much, and it made me proud to call this area home, because the people here are really its strength. And we had little children come in with their piggy banks and dump them out for the Spencer tornado victims. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And the kind of response we got, I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible moment to be in I think, the history of Sioux Falls and South Dakota.
Was the Spencer tornado the hardest story you've ever had to report?
Oh, there have been a lot of hard stories. I mean, anytime you're reporting a loss, you're talking to the family of a murder victim, you're reporting a natural disaster, you're talking to victims of natural disaster, somebody just going through a really tough time. I followed a little boy several years ago through brain surgery, and you know, you can't say something is harder than another story. You know, it's all, and it's tough to be sensitive to those victims and to ask the right questions. I think the media gets lambasted a lot for being in those, you know, covering those types of situations, but asking, you know, how do you feel? Which is a question that you never want to ask, because I mean, what are they going to say? And but they're all tough whenever a loss.
How do you manage to keep, you know, a neutral face on camera with hard stories like that? I mean, you don't want to.
Well, you can't always. Just yesterday, Beth Fuller did a story about a little boy who saved his sister, who fell into a septic tank. And it was just such a touching story. I couldn't help but brought tears to my eyes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I wouldn't be human if an emotional story didn't touch me. And the next story I had to read was about a hard murder court story, and I had this little tear running down the side of my face, which I don't know even if our viewers could see. It wasn't appropriate for the next story I was reading, but I was reacting to the story that came before that. And I mean, you're human. I mean, if you didn't react, I'd be worried. You know, I would think our viewers should be worried if I don't react to stories that are emotionally touching.
Who's been the best person you've ever interviewed?
The best interview?
Or the most interesting? You know, you talked about you got to interview former First Lady Barbara Bush, former President Bush, you know, Michael Dukakis. Anyone else stick out in your mind?
I've interviewed Kevin Costner, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm trying to think of some other famous names of people I've interviewed. I know there have been quite a few over the years. I just can't remember all of them. I'm trying to think of the most.
What was Kevin Costner's interview like? Well, him and Arnold, I mean, that's... What were they there for? Was
Kevin Costner was shooting Dances with Wolves, and I had just started in Rapid City and was able to go out to the set and do a story and interview Kevin Costner, and then my story, not me, but the video for my story was used for Entertainment Tonight, which was kind of a thrill at the time. But he was very nice, very nice guy. Who else did I interview?
And then Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was in town for...
He was in town for a presidential fitness thing at Mark Twain Elementary School, and that was fun. It was just fun to be able to meet him. He's very much like he seems, you know. There haven't been a lot of big surprises with famous people I've interviewed. A lot of them are really like they seem. Some that, like NSYNC, I've interviewed them, and you know, I guess that would be interesting to young people. It was like, who are they? You know? But there've just been various people throughout the years. It's fun because my job allows me to be in situations which I normally wouldn't be in. You know, to interview these people. I mean, if I had some other kind of job, I wouldn't be able to do something like that. So it's a lot of fun.
You've won numerous awards for your investigative reporting. What's the difference? I guess what's the difference between investigative reporting and normal, you know, just a story of the day, really?
Well, investigative reporting is enterprise reporting. You know, basically what it involves is you hear that something is going on, and you have to investigate it. You have to look into it. It involves a lot of detail and a lot of work. And the toughest thing about investigative reporting is just making sure that you have all your ducks in a row, all your facts straight, and that everything is presented in a way that is accurate and fair and won't get you sued. I mean, basically, it's a big fear these days for all television stations. I mean, they don't want to be involved in huge lawsuits. So those investigative pieces, they're exciting, they're challenging, they are fun to do, but they are a pain. They are a lot of work, and they can be a headache, too.
Someone once said, you know, an anonymous quote said that, you know you've done a very good story when both sides call you up after the story and tell you you've done a horrible job. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I prefer it when both sides call me up and say, you know, actually you were fair. You know, actually I thought you presented it in a fair way. To me, that's much more of a compliment. If both sides call me up and said I did a bad job, I would be looking for what I did wrong, you know, in that story. Did I present something inaccurate, unfairly, distort the picture? So if both sides call me up and say, you know, yeah, that was fair, then I think I've done a good job.
You've been around for quite a while here at KELO-Land. What's the biggest change you've seen in the field of local television?
Well, we used to be owned by a family. We were a family-owned television station, and now we're owned by a large broadcasting corporation. So that's a big change. The other changes, there's a lot of cosmetic changes in terms of, you know, graphics on the air, sets, things like that. There are changes. The internet and the computer is just such a different tool and is really changing and continues to change and will, you know, very much change the way we do local news, I'm sure, in the future. We've, you know, Steve Hemmingson is retired, and so he was here forever, 30 years, I think it was. So that was a big change here at KELO.
What, you know, the next day when, you know, the day after his retirement, what was that day like? Did it feel, it feel weird?
Or he was on vacation, you know, he was gone before.
and you just, you know, just continued on as the, you know, next day.
Yeah.
what do you see in the future for local television news? Do you see it taking the high road or taking the same road, or even, do you see it taking the low road?
Well, I think viewers with their remote controls determine that question. I mean, they'll watch what they want to see. So I think KELO has always been there to take the high road, and we have certain standards and ethical principles in place. We're not tabloid journalism. We're lucky in this market that we aren't neck and neck with our competitors, because I think if you go to other markets and you see stations that are neck and neck, they really sometimes, not all of them, but tend to resort to more tabloid yellow journalism just to try to get people's attention, to get them to watch. But it's always up to the viewer, and that's one thing when I hear complaints or hear things, I think you vote with your remote control every time you watch.
I guess I have to ask your opinion on this question. A lot of people, when the 90s came about, a lot of people said that some reporters, just to get where they are today at anchor spots, got plastic surgery. Now, I'm assuming you haven't had any, but no. What would you say, just, if you found out someone did to get that job, what would you say? I mean, do you agree or disagree, I guess, with that
Unfortunately,
policy?
Television is a cosmetic medium. And the first thing that people see when they turn on the TV, they see with their eyes. They see what that person looks like, and people tend to judge right away. We're bombarded in the media, in the general media, with beautiful people. That's who you see on TV, and I think that there's a lot of pressure on anchors, especially women, to look good. I mean, you have to first not have a distracting appearance. You don't want people to turn on their TV and just talk about what you look like and not listen to what you're saying. It's much more important what you're saying than what you look like, but you at least have to, I guess, be presentable, to get people's attention, and then hopefully they'll listen to what you have to say and listen to the stories you're doing.
Well, you do the 6 and 10. You do Parent Time. How did that come about?
How did what come about?
Parent Time. How did that?
I used to do consumer reports, a weekly consumer report called Common Sense. I did that for several years. And then I had my first child, Emily, who is now 3.5. And they said to me, you've done Common Sense, you've done this consumer report for a long time. What do you think about changing it to a parenting report? And I said, that's what I'm interested in right now. I'd love to do it. And I'm very interested in those issues right now. I get all those magazines and read through them, and I'm raising my own kids, so it's very relevant to me, and I think it's really relevant to our audience. We have a lot of moms out there, and a lot of working moms especially, so I think they're interested.
I asked you this before the show, and you've got the 6 and 10. You do Parent Time. You do numerous investigative reporting. You do volunteer work, and you still have a family. Yeah. I have to ask, how do you do it? How do you juggle it?
Yeah, it is a juggling act some days, and some days I feel like I have a lot of balls up in the air. One of them is going to come crashing down. I'm not Superwoman, so I don't try to do everything perfectly. You have to just let things go, and when you can get the help, and if you could afford a little bit of help, I think that's important. Like in terms of babysitters, and just I have someone come in and clean my house 2 times a month because, I just don't have time to do everything. But it's all very rewarding. And right now, my focus, number one priority is, of course, my family and my daughters. But I'm lucky to be able to have the job that I have, and I want to be a good role model for my girls to show them, that they can, if they set their minds to do something, that they can do it someday. So on one hand, I'm torn as a working mom because I love to be with them more, and I spend all my time when I'm not working and not with a certain obligation. If I have a certain obligation with the Children's Medical Network or something like that, obviously I'm there. But when I'm not working, I'm with my kids, and I'm spending good time with my kids, and I'm not off doing other things. So, hopefully I can achieve some sort of balance, and hopefully when they grow up, they won't be like, Mom, where were you? Because, I'm there. And hopefully they'll see me as a good role model and have, enriching, full, wonderful lives of their own.
What's one thing you want to do before you retire?
One thing I'd like to do. Oh.
Do you want to keep moving up? Do you want to, after a while, do you want to go, you know, I think I'm ready for network news? Do you want to move to the next step, or do you want to stay?
I don't know if that's so much up to me. I think, you know, right now, this is a terrific place to raise a family. And I've been here for a while, and I really like what I'm doing, and I'm at a great station, and so I'm lucky in those aspects. In terms of just things that I would like to do and stories I would like to cover, you know, I'd love to fly in an F-16 someday, you know, and cover that story. I'd love to go up in a hot air balloon someday, which is something I've never done. Actually, a lot of people have done that. Just some exciting, fun things. I'd like to cover those types of stories and continue to do what I do. And as long as I can continue to do what I do, I think I'm very lucky.
When you were young and you knew you wanted to be a reporter, you had two choices. You had television and radio. Why did you go down the television road, not radio?
Oh, I was terrible at splicing that tape together in my radio class. I couldn't do it. I was just like, this is awful. I think, you know, for one thing, I love telling stories with pictures, and sound is part of that, but sound and pictures and words, when it all comes together, I just think that impact is just much more powerful than just sound alone.
What would you tell, we have a few minutes here, what could you tell anyone, you know, girl or boy that's interested in this? You know, what advice would you give them?
Well, first, become a good writer. Know the grammar. Know your grammar. Mm-hmm. Know how to write. I mean, that will always benefit you no matter what career path you go down. But and that, my mother is a writer, and so that started my foundation for writing. When I was in 5th grade, I'd have to write things and turn in reports to her. And she's also a professor too, so she'd grade me tough. But I would say, you know, become a good writer, have a very, you know, solid educational background in journalism, and then get the experience. You know, that's what you have to do. Go out there and weasel your way into an internship any way you can get your foot in the door to get the actual experience.
Final question. Do you like being the newswoman?
The newswoman. I've never thought of myself as, I like to get called, are you the news lady? Quite a bit. I love my job. I mean, it's exciting but to me, you know, I'm just a human being. I'm just another person just like anybody else with a fun job, with a great job that people do see me, you know, so it's a job that gets a little more attention than other jobs. But it's just a job, and hopefully I'm just doing the best I can at it.
And you hope you'll be around forever?
I hope I'll be around forever. I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. I don't have a crystal ball, so hopefully I'll be able to do this for quite a while. You know, women, as we age on the air, I don't know if we're given as much grace as men are, but we'll see. You know, maybe I can teach journalism someday if I'm not on the air.
Well, Angela, it's been a wonderful experience, and you know, just from talking with you today, you really have an enthusiasm about your job. Mm-hmm. And I thank you for taking the time to come down here and talking with us today.
You're welcome.
And I thank you for watching us today. I'm Avi Forstein, and I hope to see you for the next edition of Face to Face. Until then, good night.